curiosity converts fear into fascination. It creates this sense of, I have an opportunity to learn now. We all talk about, well, this isn't a problem, this is an opportunity. Well, it's true, but that gets cliche after a while. Just find something that really just you want to dive into and figure out.
Hey there, and welcome to Under the Roof, the official podcast of Baker Roofing Company. I'm Todd Kavanaugh.
And I'm Matt Elban, and we're here to connect the dots between field and office, leadership and crew, values and action.
In each episode, we dive into the stories, lessons, and updates that matter to our team.
From safety and career growth to company milestones and good old-fashioned storytelling, it's all about living out what makes Baker, Baker. Let's get into it.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Under the Roof. I'm Todd Kavanaugh.
And I'm Matt Elban. Today, we are headed to Shenandoah Valley, specifically Harrisonburg, Virginia, to sit down with one of the long-tenured general managers of the Baker team.
And it's Darrell Bailey. He has led our Harrisonburg branch for quite a long time, I think. And we'll actually let him tell you exactly how long, because I couldn't remember in a minute. But what you need to know up front is that Darrell is just one of those people who makes a company feel like a community. That's just one of those feelings you get when being around Darrell. His branch is always consistent. His team is loyal. And Harrisonburg generally knows Baker Roofing because of Darrell Bailey.
We also saw some pictures of a batting cage, which I'm excited to talk about in a few minutes. Possibly that you have some history on stage. So there's a lot to get into, and we're going to get after it.
So Darrell, welcome to Under the Roof.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Good to see you. So Darrell, we're going to kick it off like we always do with the first question. If you've listened before, you know the question's coming up. So you've had time to prep for this. I expect a really excellent answer. What's the latest thing that you have read or are reading, and what's your biggest takeaway from it?
I'm reading The British Are Coming. It's a book by Rick Atkinson. And, you know, here we are in the anniversary, the 250th anniversary of our country. And I thought it was appropriate to go back and read it. I read it once before. It's part of a 3-book series that covers the Revolutionary War from the beginning, actually prior to the beginning. And ultimately, the 3rd book, which has not been printed yet, is going to take it to the end. So it's kind of a celebration for me to go back and to read it. It was a great read. Every time I reread a book, I don't reread them that often, don't get me wrong, but when I do reread a book, I always pick something different out of it. And I'm at a different stage in life than I was 5 years ago, you know, when I read it. And we all move through time. And that's what I like about history. And that's what really motivates me a lot of times, is to think about what people have done in the past and what kind of opportunities and privileges we have today because of it, and what we're going to leave for our posterity as well.
I love that.
It's just it's a cool ride for me.
I'm a big fan of Revolutionary War history, and I also love the quote, if we don't learn from history, we'll be forced and condemned to repeat it. So I do think that applies to business as well as, you know, your personal life history, what you've got going on, what your parents have done, and also our country's history. So that's awesome. I write down every book, and I do work my way through them. So I'm looking forward to reading that one. I hadn't heard of that before. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, once you read that one, you'll want to read number 2 because it's coming. It's already out, and you'll be waiting with bated breath for number 3.
I will be waiting for number 3 before we come on.
Even though we know the ending already.
We do. That's the advantage we have, I guess.
Well, in reality, we think we do, and that's the challenge.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Here we go.
Good. Yep.
So, Darrell, before we get into the serious stuff, give us the number. How many years have you actually been running the Harrisonburg branch?
I've been with Baker Roofing since 2004, and that was the beginning of the Harrisonburg branch. So this is my 22nd year at Baker Roofing.
And that's awesome. Congratulations. Happy anniversary. All the things.
Thank you.
Darrell, I hadn't realized that we started in the same year. Technically, I actually started a few months before that, but 2004 is my official start date because I was a temp when I started here, so that didn't really count.
Yeah.
But yeah, didn't know that.
It's good, man. Yeah. Yeah, we both didn't have gray hair back then either, did we?
That's right. Another fun fact for those of you listening, if you want to see me and Darrell fist bumping on Google Street View, go and search 517 Mercury Street, and you can see me and Darrell out there fist bumping.
On the Street View. I remember the day, Todd. I saw the Google car drive through the parking lot, and I'm like, Todd, we got to go out there. We got to go out there. We'll be on film, you know? So we run out there. He carries I think we were carrying something. Looked like we were transacting business. We didn't look directly. We were just fist bumping. So they would put us on there. Yeah,
That's amazing.
that was fun.
It was funny. And actually the way Darrell said it, he's like, "Oh my gosh, Todd, follow me." It was something like that. And Darrell's the kind of guy, when he says follow me, you follow Darrell because he's up for adventure. So
Yeah,
well,
we had a good
to
time.
that point, adventure, Darrell, I've heard many times, I'd say many, a handful of times, that you're an actor. And I don't think that means like in life. You're a very authentic, genuine person. Is it true? Do you have experience on the stage? Is there a funny story there? Where do you think that originates from?
Oh, wow. I was just thinking the other day, and I really wanted to be in acting, but I realized I couldn't make a living at it. So, but I've always enjoyed, opportunities to get up and to do something either inside of a theater or outdoor venues. We did a little historical representation, kind of just a little appreciation at Thanksgiving time over in Charlottesville years ago. And I did that for about 4 or 5 years and portrayed Patrick Henry and had some really good interactions with people that were seriously into the reenactment thing. And that was the best part about it.
Huh.
I had this cheap wig from the Five and Dime downtown Harrisonburg. And, I wore that thing like I was just so proud to have that on. And my family came and the kids were little and we're running around. They were all in period costumes and just had a great time. So, but one of the funniest stories acting is back in college. I went to James Madison University, JMU, go Dukes. And I was in theater class and auditioned for a part in Macbeth. And I got a dual part. One of them was the whey-faced loon, which is what Macbeth, called me. And I was supposed to announce the moving of Burnham Wood to Dunsinane. And I was announcing this prophetic thing that would happen to bring about Macbeth's demise. And he had been prophesied over in the play that he would, when Burnham Wood moves to Dunsinane, that would spell the end for Macbeth. Well, guess what? I was standing in front of this imposing actor. I mean, he was mid-40s, he was a teacher, he's a great actor. I still remember his face glaring at me as Macbeth as I had to announce this bad news to him, and I froze. Right in front of the audience, I froze. So you should have seen the glare and just the disdain pouring off of Macbeth at me. So, that kind of sobered me up. Maybe I need to do something different. And probably the best thing happened when I did not pursue an acting career.
Well, for those of you listening, I want you to go to your podcast, whatever you're streaming through, and hit rewind 4 times. I'll take you back about 2 minutes. And Darrell mentioned something. He said, I have a wig. Okay. So hold on, Darrell. Now, hold on. I'd like to see this come out. The next general manager meeting, I believe, is sometime in a few months, like November.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that wig. And I think you need to be rehearsing your lines. I will talk to Barbara and make sure it happens. All right, we can move on to the next question,
goodness.
Todd.
Okay. It got tossed, So
that's you, Matt.
All right. So tell us about your team. Who are the people? What makes the Harrisonburg crew the Harrisonburg crew?
Well, first of all, I love our guys. I love our team. We've got such strength and abilities, talent in our team, and we have a really communicative team. We for a long time we officed in a common area where there was no privacy, and so when we built this new building, I wanted some of that to be part of our experience here. I didn't want just compartmentalized experiences at work. I wanted a place where we could all aggregate, tell stories, and also hear things that you wouldn't otherwise hear that you might need to know. That some of the best stuff in our office is caught. I'm not saying all of it. You've got to be. It's better to be taught than caught, but we hear things as relates to us in coming together in a common area like that gives us the ability to just, bring it all out on the table. And sometimes there's a lot of creativity that comes out of that. So I like to think we're very communicative. We've got department heads. Jason Lawrence is Department 40. He's our re-roofing department. He's the operations manager, and he's got a great team working under him, Stephanie Schuler and Armando Mancias and Edwin Andres. Edwin and Armando are 2 CMs, and gosh, Edwin's been with us over 15 years, and Armando is right around 20 years, I believe. And I've known Armando since 1993, maybe. So it's got some long tenure in roofing there on Department 40, and the production, what they produce is phenomenal. Always high high in the scores with their inspections, quality ratings. And I know Jason, I tell him that he's a force of nature. He doesn't know the word can't. Years ago, I heard can't, never got it done. And he's the embodiment of that. If it can be done responsibly, ethically, quality-wise, he can do it. So I have a lot of faith in those guys, and it makes my life a lot easier, to be honest with you. So I can just do what I call creative meandering and pop in and, and see what I can do to help remove roadblocks and maybe in some way, shape, or form give them a little lift. Same thing with the Department 90, which is our service and repair department. Ralph Smith is the department head. David Nelson is the service manager, and Barbara has been working as the default coordinator for service for years. Between the three of those people, we've got a good team that knows what they're looking at, that knows how to make adjustments really on the fly, whether it's, looking at work orders, purchasing materials, making sure the customer gets all the notifications and whatnot necessary to set up the job for success. You just have three very motivated people there. So I think that we're only as good as what we show up at on a daily basis. And I think on a daily basis, on a consistent level, we show up for work, and we show up as who we are, and who we are feels really good. We've got a great crew under each of those departments. The Department 40, actually, we took a number of those guys and put them over into Department 90. So you've got a ton of experience in both re-roofing and service in our service repair department. That actually has been very, very good for us from a technical and quality standpoint. It actually was a big boost to the level of play that we can bring to the jobs that we do. So I'm very proud of our team. And then, not to forget, the sales team. Man, I tell you, they show us how it's supposed to be done. And you are what you eat. And that's one of the things that I say a lot. In fact, because I like to eat a lot, right? But I say that a lot. You are what you eat. And when it comes to sales, the type of work that the guys bring to the table really makes a difference as to how we grow and what our customer experience is. And I think that we've got a very, very high level of integrity in our sales, and all four of our sales guys go out there with the mind that, we want to be that trusted advisor for you. So being trusted advisors is something that I know when Mike came 17 years ago, we talked about that. He's been with us for 17 years now. And I can truly say that that's part of our DNA in sales. We want to be that guy for you. There's nobody wants to take care of you more than Baker Roofing does in the market. I'm not saying we consistently hit on a day-to-day basis. I'm not saying we should consistently show up and everything's rosy. It's sometimes rough and tumble construction, right? But we do a good job, and I'm very proud of the team that we've got over here. I'm probably missing some people I should make mention of. All the guys in the field, they put their fingers on more money physically than anybody else in the company. They've got their hands on materials and products and customers' roofs. And so that's very serious when you got a service team that treats their job the way that these guys do, and they're responsible for the profitability in a big way, because that's where the rubber meets the road. So I can't speak more highly of the team without going into hyperbole, but I'm tempted to do that right now, so you better stop me.
That's fantastic.
Darrell, what I love is your team so well. You ran through and you knew their contributions to the team, and that obviously just was made clear in your answer there to the question. One of the things I think about, we've got a lot of different markets in our footprint, Baker Roofing Company. We've got some markets that aren't as big as others. We have like Nashville and we have Charlotte and some, Richmond and some large markets here. And Harrisonburg kind of, I guess, it sits in the middle a little bit in terms of size. But one of the things I always think about with your office and with your market is you have a reputation for being consistent, which is fantastic in the construction industry, obviously, right? Consistency is a virtue. You're just solid year after year. In your mind, what is one of those secrets to being consistent and showing up consistently?
That's a good question. I'll give you three answers. No, I'm kidding. That's a debate tactic right there. Well, first of all, I think just maybe the level of care that is demonstrated. People like to see and to be seen for who they are. And I think honest and respectful communication is the start of that. I think that consistency is a cultural thing with us. And if it's inconsistent, you can sniff that out pretty quickly in an environment where you have those expectations. I don't think it's anything that we've legislated or built a process specifically to do that gets us the consistency that we want. But there is a give a care attitude. We care deeply about what we do. And I know that there are multiple times where there's interpersonal, things that need to be worked out that do get worked out. I like to, this is not a good example. Don't put this on the podcast, but one of my favorite movies is Crocodile Dundee. One of the others is Silverado. And I'll use those analogies. But Crocodile Dundee, he was asked by the reporter, the New York reporter, so what happens when you have a need for a psychologist or mental health, whatever. He says, we go to Wally's, and that's the bar and the drinking hole. And he says, I tell Wally, and Wally tells everybody else in the town. By the time he gets back around to me, there is no problem, So I don't know what that means to y'all, but to me, it's just, it's like, you can work your problems out amongst yourselves. And I think we try to stay real time with that. And we're not perfect at that, but consistent performance financially is also very, very important to us, and the stability that comes with that. The team knows that at Baker Roofing, you are going to have a job. You're going to, be able to continue and grow. Yes, we've hit some rocky times, with the drought last year and with COVID, and over the course of 24 years, we've seen it. But we consistently also get out in front of customers, and we don't take them for granted. Customer is they're the king. I don't want us to take for granted, because as soon as you lose your grip on that, then I think you've lost the grip on why you're in business. We're here to serve and provide a valuable service, and customers do appreciate that. We may not be out in front of every customer that needs to hear that and needs to know that and needs to experience it, but we're working hard to get there too. But we always want to take care of that customer relationship as good as possible.
Yeah, those are good answers, Darrell. It certainly makes you think. A lot of folks that listen to this podcast maybe are part of a team or part of a branch, and wanting to be consistent is certainly something we should all be striving for. And what can we take from what you said and apply it, right, to our own businesses, even our personal lives? Being consistent is something to strive for. So, Darrell, what's the proudest you've ever been of someone on your team? Tell us that story.
Or a top proud moment.
Yeah, a top proud moment. So there's so many times when, you're, and for years, having been in roofing prior to coming to Baker Roofing, when it rains, you're on edge. You've got jobs in process that everybody wants to get watertight before the rain hits. You've got repairs that you've made that, may get the leak. Repairs being not an exact science. Sometimes you get what you go after, and sometimes you don't resolve the problem before the rain hits. But when I roll into the office in the morning and I see the crew that's been out all night that has been doing a weather walk on a perfectly dry building that did not need, but it was so sensitive and so important to them, to the team, that they ensured that if that roof leaks overnight, that they don't want to be the ones to hear about 8 o'clock in the morning. And whether it's my CM or whether it's one of the field or foreman or laborers that I'm talking to, just to see what they're willing to put in terms of time and talent and energy to make sure the customer was 100% satisfied. In our business, you can say that water intrusion is the enemy, and that's what we do. We stop water from entering in so people can have productive lives, make whatever they make, bake whatever they bake, live their lives in a dry environment and safe, and go home after work and have dinner with their family. And so if we can take that worry off their shoulders, and then sometimes we hear back how pleased that the customer is that we would do that. Sometimes that facility manager that has to bring the key at 2 a.m. just so we can do our weather walk, he's not as happy as we are, but he appreciates that too, because we resolve problems that he has had to deal with for years. And so the way it comes together, I guess, in a pinch is often how we best show ourselves who we are. And those types of scenarios are really good. There's a ton of other examples, and usually, just interactions in the hallway. And I'm just so happy that we had those conversations. But if you want one example, that is an example. Yeah.
Yeah. I love going back to like what has made you consistent, I think like what we've found probably here at Baker or any winning team or in your personal life, it's not usually one big silver bullet, but it's doing all the small things and all the small habits to form a pattern of success. And that's just one of them, right? A weather lock. That's like a key to success, to remain consistently successful as a branch or, as a roofing company. Well, I heard something recently. I think, somebody on our team that manages our social media had told me about a project that you guys had recently done and donated. And I think it was a batting cage. And I thought, oh, and she was going to show me a picture that it was going to be a little shingle roof, which obviously there's nothing wrong with shingle roofs. We do those each and every day. But when she showed me a picture, was this beautiful standing seam, I think if I'm remembering right, a green metal roof. Tell us a little bit about that project and what you did in the community there.
Yeah. So it was actually a exposed fastener corrugated metal panel system that was what they wanted. It's more of an agricultural feel to it. And we don't do a lot of those, especially over occupied residences. But for a batting cage, it fit their budget. And so what we did is really fun because 3 of our guys are Broadway, Virginia area, residents in and outside the town of Broadway. And so in Broadway, they are really proud of their record, both in football and baseball and sports. And it's a very sports athletics oriented community up there. And so one of the guys that Mike knows, Mike Oler knows, and Mike's kids play. They play ball up there and involved in athletics. They're coming up along. Tell you what, he's growing up some strapping athletic kids there as they grow. So being involved in that community, he was approached that, hey, we need to get a roof on this batting cage that we want. And so Mike came to me and I said, okay, all right, let's do it. Let's get that roof on for them. And so they put the roof on a weekend. I think we donated the time to go up there and do the labor portion of it and got it knocked out. And I think the guys that worked on it were just as proud as anybody that they can put their fingerprints on something that is going to help the kids, help the community. So go Gobblers.
That's awesome. Is this a one-time thing, or is giving back become something that's kind of baked into how you run your branch, Darrell?
Yeah, it's becoming more of a part of what we do. We do our involvement with the Chamber of Commerce's, and we have occasion to do some other community organizations like that. But it's something that we're targeting as an area of growth for us because, ultimately giving back to the community means more than just providing stable jobs and good roofing. And it has to do with what we can do. And I know the guys individually have their projects that they work in, and we try to support that. So that's how this came, and it was organic. One of our guys had an idea, a need, and we responded to it. So, but yeah, we've done a couple of things like that before, and it always makes me feel good when we can do that. There's a sponsorship for Trout Unlimited that we're sponsoring. This is our 3rd year. No, it's our 4th year sponsoring this event, and they take veterans with various levels of disability and go trout fishing. And there's this beautiful stretch, absolutely gorgeous stretch of clear, cold, fast-running, wide creek called Beaver Creek that's been rehabilitated over the course of years by Trout Unlimited, and they have the Beaver Creek Invitational. In fact, that's coming up here in another weekend. So yeah, we support that. Interestingly, Doug Miller had started a chapter of Trout Unlimited. So when I told him about that, he got excited.
I bet he did.
He got as excited about that as he did about a roof sale, I'm telling you.
So, Darrell, what does it mean for you personally? I know I've got an answer to this question, but what does it mean for you personally that in your professional life that you can be a part of a team in a company that does things like that in your community? Because I've been part of other companies way in the past that it wasn't regular to, have that type of mindset. How does it play for you to be a part of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if I understand you correctly, at this point in thinking about it from the standpoint of today, where I am, and to be able to know that I've got the freedom to do that because we've been financially responsible as a company, because we've grown something that doesn't just rely on my input. If I if I wasn't here and when I'm not in the office physically or when I'm on vacation, this branch runs just so great that, it's amazing. I feel like I've got the freedom to invest myself personally in other things and to meet other people in the community. I really enjoy getting out there and meeting people and talking to people. It's just how I'm wired. It's just one of those things that motivates me. And so in the process of doing that, you learn things. And I like people, and I like people that like talking to people. And it just creates these connections that you can then work with. I feel like I'm growing professionally just as much by developing a larger group of a social network, if you want to call it that, of people in the community. I'm certainly richer for the many people that I've been able to meet the last 2 years. And it's only been with the last 2 years that I've felt some of the pressures of the day-to-day grind, come off my shoulders a little bit more, that I could go out and spend a little time working, just meeting, getting together with people at different events. Often it's event oriented. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a lunch, Other times it's going to visit customers that I haven't seen in a long time. That's to me what really, I think, motivates me just as much as anything else. I love the technical side of roofing. I really do. And I geek out, so to speak. That's a younger generation thing, but so we're geek out, but I geek out about, hydrocarbons and, and chemical, and the way that the roof comes together and the chemical nature of the properties and properties of the materials and, and then history about, why these roofing materials are no longer used and what happened and why it was, what's good, what's bad, and what we've learned over the years. Because I've been in the roofing industry since 1992, and it sounds like a long time, but it feels like it's been a short time. And so there's always something else to learn. And that's motivates me. I think that, I've got some things that the team needs to hear. They may not want to learn about phenolic foam insulation. I teach them anyway, and I have fun doing it.
Darrell, you're going to like the next question. Baker has 29 locations now. We're a real national scale operation, but when you're in Harrisonburg, does it feel like that? Or does it feel like your branch, your town?
Well, I will say yes and no. I know we're a big, wonderful company, but the experience that you have on a local basis is truly what the company means to whomever you're dealing with, right? So it doesn't matter whether it's headquartered in Cary or, whether we've got a branch in Fort Myers or whatever. It doesn't, those things are great, but what we can bring to the customer in Fort Myers and in, Charleston, which is where my son lives now, or here in Harrisonburg, that's what matters most to our customers. So what was your question?
I told you you're going to like it. So you're in Harrisonburg. Does it feel like it's a big company, or does it feel like with a national presence, or does it feel like it's still your branch, your town? And I think you've answered it. It is your branch, your town. Yeah.
It's both. Yeah. And it's Baker's branch. I mean, sometimes people say, hey, you're Darrell Baker, right? I said, yeah, I resemble that. And I wear it proudly, but it feels like I don't want to say a small family company, but it does. It's almost like I can pick up the phone and talk to second or third and fourth generation bakers right now that I know have been doing this a long time, that have a vested interest, a name to put on it. And I love that. It's got the best of both worlds, the family, small company feel, in the sense that you're never more than one step removed from, talking to whoever you want to in this wonderful organization that we've got with all this talent and experience. And yet we've got the punch to give that big company response to the needs. I may not be the guy you want to call for a slate roof, but I know somebody who is. And I know that when I tell you, you can talk to our department that's going to run that slate roof, it's going to be done right. And that's pretty cool. I don't know how to express it because, people don't appreciate how much effort it takes to take a company to the level that Baker has. And I don't, because I don't know but it takes a group, and it's like, but it's the sum of all the parts, right? So everything that we do at the local branch matters. Now, on the flip side, when I go out in the community, these are the people that pay our bills, and our men and our crews, our men and women live in the community. And so it's this very, and especially in the Shenandoah Valley. The Shenandoah Valley is it's just in this real blessed pocket of space in this country and this state. It's unlike any place that I've ever lived before. And I've been here since 1982 when I came to Madison, and I never left. And it feels like home. And And people have that same feeling. I hear that from a lot of people from out of town that have moved. I mean, this is the place you want to protect and be, and be in community and raise your kids. Raised 4 kids here in Weir's Cave, which is just south of Harrisonburg. And I will say it was a great experience. And I knew if they went to the lawn party and they did something that I wouldn't be proud of, that somebody that I knew was there watching them do it would tell me about it later. And they knew that too, So yes, it's both a big, wonderful company, but it's also something that is impactful, meaningful, and relevant to the local community.
Yeah, there's this feeling of a large company that has a giant footprint like we do, Mid-Atlantic, Southeast, even kind of almost reaching into the Midwest a little bit in Tennessee and Alabama. And yet there's a reach and a resource that comes with that, which is great. And then there's that local feel. When you talk about Harrisonburg, I've been there a number of times. I have family that's from there on my dad's side, and Uncle George and Aunt Maxine and the chicken farmers live there for
right. The footprints on tile is great.
One of the first ones ever built was built by one of my ancestors. So kind of
cool. But
that small town feel, I totally get that. It resonates. So and I know our customers do too.
Yeah. Oh, there's another point I was going to make about that had relevance to it. You've got the different branches. You've got the corporate. Yeah, I'll stop there. I lost it because your story was so impactful. I love it. When I go past that barn, I always think of you, Matt.
I appreciate that.
It's right off 81. It's a little elevated off. You can look down and see that barn, and it's still. I think it's still in pretty good shape too.
It is.
So
a well-crafted piece of history.
Well, I think, Darrell, I've been here about the same time you have, and I think that is one of those unique part of our company's personality, right? That we don't often see at some of the other players that we compete with, is we have both that scale of a company that's all throughout the Eastern Seaboard and beyond a little bit, but we also have that local family, because of the tenure of people that come here to build their career and stay.
Yeah.
So it's some really unique DNA that our company has. And then you and layer on top of that now our 100% employee ownership. And I really think that creates a really unique environment for our company to develop a personality. Again, that's unique in our marketplace.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Yeah. Yeah. It's like we're preserving something. We found something that really works.
Yeah.
And we're preserving it for the future. And that's the way I see the ESOP.
Yep.
It's a way for us to maintain continuity and give people even a greater sense of ownership. And we all want it. That's the thing, is that it's a company people want to be a part of, which is really cool. I was told when I got into roofing back in 92 that roofing is like quicksand, Darrell. Once you're in, it's hard to get out. It's so good. It's somewhat recession proof. You can make a good living at it. Not many people are doing it well. You have a chance to be better. And when I found Baker Roofing and found it to be true, it's like, man, this is unique. This is worth protecting.
Yeah.
And I hope that's the mindset of everybody in our ESOP, because we're all in it together now, and we're teamed up with a great team.
And, I feel like, Matt, that may be I've thought about this too in the past, like almost everybody has that story. How did you get into roofing? Right? There's not a lot of industries where you're like, well, how did you get into banking? Or how did you get into roofing? And we all came a lot of times from different backgrounds and stayed, and that might be a great question for another day. Well, Darrell, and I'll say this too. You mentioned, I think you're right about the Shenandoah Valley. Yeah, right where you come off the Blue Ridge. Beautiful place up, right up on the mountain. So it's love the area. So I want to pivot a tiny bit and talk a little bit about like the early on Darrell, and I'm curious, is there something that you believed early in your career, whether it was just getting started in roofing or whatever it was before roofing, but is there something that you believe early on in your career that you've completely changed your mind on now at where you are in your career?
What an odd question. I'm just kidding. That's great. But that's a deep question. Yeah. I think early on in the career, it was all about just making sure my family was fed, and that, the worries of being a young father and trying to make it in the world, that somehow, some way I had to figure it out. And I think now that I've gone through 40 years of marriage and 4 kids, and we're still moving in a positive direction. Family's growing, the grandkids are coming along, and is that you just have to do, the next thing, and everything does tend to work out. There's an element of faith in that for sure. When I was hired into Baker Roofing, my boss at the time, Bill, great guy, I miss him. He passed from COVID a few years back, but he really truly was a mentor to me. And he said, Darrell, you said you do the right thing and the right thing will happen. And you can be told that, you can understand that intellectually, but to be able to incorporate that into the way you look at business, it takes a lot of pressure off of you to be the resident expert, to look at what the resources are and to just make good decisions one step at a time. So I think that I've gone from worrying about the day to day, getting frustrated when I lost a job or when it didn't go right on the site. And this even goes back to before, when I was in just general construction and drywall and building supply, but certainly into my roofing career. Those things are real and you feel them, but if you do the right thing will happen, and you begin to grow with confidence in the fact that you're going to stay the course. And the older I get too, I find that what Mark Lee says is that, we don't want to be looking in the rearview mirror all the time because of mistakes that we've made that we wished we hadn't. We want to make good decisions today so that everything in the rearview mirror, as you look back on them, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. It's good, and we're not perfect. I'm not perfect about that, but it does give me hope that even during the tough times that I don't fret, just don't fret. There's an old fashioned word for you. No fret zone. So that's where I'm at today, trying to live that. And, if something might come up that'll ruin my funk, or create a funk. But, something might come up that challenges that any day, and it could happen. But I think stay the course, and don't get too proud. Don't get too excited when your highs are high, and don't get too down when your lows are low. And that, to me, I'll tell you, leadership training about 10 years ago, I think 9 or 10 years ago, I took the leadership training course that Baker offered, and Dr. Gary McGrath, Statarius, shout out to him, shout out to that team. I am I hope, proof that process and that training worked. It's not that I absorbed it and ate it like a pie. It took time. It takes time for that new understanding about mindset and about emotional intelligence and personality and communication styles. I go on and on about that because, it's almost like having that currency in my pocket now that I can pull out and say, yeah, this is exactly what I understand from leadership training, and it works, But every day I think about something that relates to that. And in this case, the emotional intelligence of not letting your highs be too high or lows be too low. I read an article in Forbes magazine, I believe it was, when Elon Musk was first approached during a workday, I think in a hallway at work. And somebody said to him, "Hey, Elon, you realize you just became the richest man in the world." And he paused and thought, and his 5 words that he said was, "How interesting, back to work." And he just moved on. And so somebody's got a vision and a focus like that knows that you do the right thing will happen. I look up to people like that, and I hope I'm becoming that person as well. Not Elon Musk, but in my own realm,
I'm going to ask this question. It might be a little bit of a repeat, but I think maybe it'll give you a chance to speak to some of the coming up generation of folks that are in our company.
Sure.
Someone maybe just starting out as a branch manager somewhere, or even just a brand new employee to Baker. What's the one thing that you'd tell them that maybe no one told you? So your chance to impart some wisdom on the next generation, Darrell.
Wow. Find something every day that fascinates you about what you do. Coal tar used to fascinate the bejabbers out of me. And I used, just it's a component of roofing that's old school. And so the history of it, so you dive into the history of how they made the rag wool or the rag felts that they used in coal tar and why the buildings were built dead level. Find something that fascinates you, and don't just pass it on, or pass it over and move on to the next thing that's more urgent. Stop for a minute, focus on what's important and how that might fit into what's important. We all live in 4 different quadrants. I love the Stephen Covey analogy. We can always be working on the urgent, not important stuff. And then the emails, the phone rings, someone interrupts you and you're, but it's not that important stuff. And then we tend to focus on the stuff that's just urgent, that's important, because we let that go. And then, and then there's the not urgent, unimportant stuff that we can all let go. I don't care if my car is not washed every day or whatever that is, and focus on stuff that's that's not urgent and important. But make sure you don't wait until it gets urgent before you focus on the important stuff. And in our business, constant learning is essential. Become the expert in the little stuff, and then become an expert in more little stuff. And then you'll start to understand the importance of making that seam correctly if you're in the field. The importance of getting that primer just right. For me, I always look back on what we used to do. We were using black glue. We were scrubbing it in circles, trying to get that seam just right. Then they told us to brush it with straight lines. And they told us, well, don't do that. Go back to circles. And then they came up with primer instead of black glue. And then they came up with seam tape. So knowing that is actually very great for somebody who's starting out in the field to know why an EPDM black membrane roof is going to fail or why it failed at that point. But find something that fascinates you and kind of dive into it and try to do that every day, because sometimes you can't control what comes at you that you have to handle. Find something you can control in a responsible way and still incorporate that into your job. And if that means learning how to build a Salesforce report like I did yesterday, first time I ever did that, and I was proud of myself. It was something that I was able to tailor to what I wanted. I knew it was out there. I just didn't take the time, but it became important and somewhat urgent for me to do that. And I was able to do that. So, but every day, if you can learn, and if you can face the challenges that come at you in roofing without fear, but with curiosity, we have a fundamental that addresses that curiosity. Curiosity converts fear into fascination. It creates this sense of, I have an opportunity to learn now. We all talk about, well, this isn't a problem. This is an opportunity. Well, it's true, but that gets cliche after a while. Just find something that really just you want to dive into and figure out. But when a problem comes up, ask the questions. Oh, that's interesting. How curious. Back to work. I've got some work to do. Convert that to forward motion and do something that you can control on a daily basis that makes a difference. When COVID hit, we had no control over the economy. We had no control over the sales part. Well, we did, but we didn't as much as we used to. Didn't have control over material supply and the big freeze, And so I was advised by a good friend that find something you can control and make a positive difference in, and your world gets better and you become a better person for it. And then you impact people positively in that way too. Hard to live by. And yeah, it still kind of sinks you in the gut when you lose a job by X number of dollars or when something goes wrong. But you can still learn from those opportunities, turn that fear, or that immediate reaction response into curiosity.
Hard to live by, but something to shoot for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My opinion only, and that and $2 to buy a cheap cup of coffee. There you go.
Not even anymore. Can you find a $2 cup of coffee?
Well, you might not be a bonus buy or something.
Yeah.
That's right.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. I want to surf it. You said something and I wrote it down that I thought was really, really good. And, all of us are leaders. Somewhere in our professional life, we can lead, regardless of we report to people report to us. We all can lead. And I've always loved the definition of leadership, which is having the capacity to meet the demands of reality. But you said leadership is like currency that I can have in my pocket and be ready to spend. And I'd almost say like leadership, and you did say that. So we can rewind and find it. In preparation. And I just love that thinking, leadership and the training you had in leadership becomes like currency that's ready to spend in your pocket. And I think that's just a great way to think about just being prepared for your day as a leader, whatever.
I was told a long time ago in relationships that you need to make 10 deposits for every withdrawal that you make on it. And you got to have it there in order to pay it out. Sometimes you got to withdraw on that account, and say the hard thing, but yeah. But the fact is that everybody leads in every role in this company that they do. There's an element of leadership no matter what your role is. And I guess that's the other thing is that you take leadership in your own realm. Sounds very patriotic here on the 250th anniversary, but leadership in your own realm to do the right thing has an impact on everybody around you. And there are leaders in this branch and in the company that don't even know they're leaders, but they are just by their example. And it's easy to dismiss that as, it's just sentimentality, Darrell. That's just, no, it's true because everybody's taking their cue from other people as well as their own internal sense of what's right and wrong.
Yeah. Well, Darrell, hey, this has been fantastic. The time always flies. I look at the clock and I'm like, gosh, this has really moved along. And I had one final question for you. It's the way that we end every one of the podcasts is, Matt asked you about reading, and now I'm going to ask you about listening. Like, what's on heavy rotation for you? Whether that's like whether that's music like an album,
Yeah.
or a podcast or an audiobook. What's on heavy rotation for Darrell Bailey?
So I really like music. I went through a Supertramp phase about 2 months ago,
All right.
and beyond the stuff that got played on the airway, Childhood Vision, stuff that you probably wouldn't have heard on the airwaves years ago, but was probably among their better. And currently woke up this morning singing, "Hey baby, what's good?" It's Marvin Gaye song. What's going on? What's happening, brother? It's on the What's Going On album. So I think that I'm going to be on that What's Going On album for a little while. It's one of my favorites. It's just got such soul and such passion, and it's relevant for the day. And you listen to the lyrics on it. So yeah, full disclosure. Yeah.
That is a fantastic image to leave us on the podcast today, is Darrell Bailey waking up singing Marvin Gaye.
I
in the
love
morning.
this.
No, I mean, falsetto it. He wasn't, but
It's all right.
Well, this has really been so great. Thank you for giving us a real look at what it means to be Darrell Bailey and what it means to show up for your community and your branch and your company for 20 years.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. It's been fun for me too. I can't believe you guys pay me to do this.
We do, yeah. I tell you what, man, Harrisonburg is lucky to have you, and honestly, so are we. So is Baker. I'm fortunate that I can call you a friend. I've known you for 15 years almost now, and certainly enjoy
That's
getting
right.
to know you deeper than most have. But this is what Baker looks like at its best: skilled, consistent, genuinely invested in the people around us. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for that.
Just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for listening to Under the Roof. This is the podcast that we open up the hood of Baker Roofing Company and look what's inside us in the industry. So thank you for following us along today.
And as always, we will leave you with this: we shall do good work, at a profit if we can, at a loss if we must, but always good work.
That wraps up this episode of Under the Roof. Thanks for joining us and being part of the Baker Roofing family.
If you liked what you heard, share it with your crew. Hit the follow button and keep the conversation going wherever you work.
We're here to keep you informed, inspired, and included, because the more connected we are, the better we work together.
And as always, we'll leave you with this: we shall do good work, at a profit if we can, at a loss if we must, but always good work. See you next time.